So I just want to check, can everyone who is joining at home see the...
You have to put that on mute.
I can hear fine.
Brilliant. Can you see the
Lovely.
presentation as well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you see the screen, the presentation
Yes.
on the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Mumbles Community Council
Brilliant.
Carbon Footprint Report. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, I'll just, as I say, just do the preliminaries. I haven't, Phil is here. I was about to say, Phil has given his apologies, and lo and behold, there he is.
I told him we weren't correct, so he was in bed, so he'll be listening in, but I don't think he'll see.
Okay, that's fine. No worries. Right. And who is IH?
That's me, Chair. It's Ian Hughes.
Of course, Ian Hughes. I'm thinking, I don't remember. Right, Ian, do you have any apologies?
Yes, I've got one. It's not a councillor, but I've got it anyway. It's from Chris Evans.
Chris Evans, okay.
Are we recording? It has started, hasn't it? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, recording started.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
No problem. Can you just close the little box? Yeah. And have we got anything on the agenda that anyone needs to declare an interest in? No? Good. Right, okay. Well, I will pass you over to Dan Staniszek.
Staniszek, yes.
Staniszek, from the Environment Centre, who is obviously going to give us a report from the work that they did looking at the MCC carbon footprint as part of the Big Climate Leap project. So I will hand over to Dan.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to address the Environment Committee. I'm sure some of you will have read the report and possibly you know it in detail. If you do, and I'm telling you things that you already know, then I apologise. But if you can advance to the next slide. So the Big Climate Leap is we're coming close to the end of our second year of a 5-year campaign. It's a project that was funded by the National Lottery, and we're looking to engage community groups and individuals across Swansea to a number of things: to educate on climate change, to develop climate leadership, and also to reduce the carbon footprint. And so there are various organisations that have signed up in various capacities, and we're working with a number to do various things. But yes, our number one objective is this 25% reduction. So on the next slides, those of you who have seen the report, I'll just very briefly talk about the methodology. So broadly, we're taking on board the internationally recognised greenhouse gas protocol, which splits down emissions into 3 categories. Scope 1 is the direct emissions, according to the organisation, which is typically your gas and your fossil fuel use in vehicles and things like that. Scope 2 is the indirect emissions, so electricity. Everyone uses electricity, but the emissions are generated remotely in the power station. So those are indirect. And then the Scope 3, which is the most tricky and also, as it happens, the largest in most cases, are the, if you like, the embedded carbon and all the things that you're buying and doing. And if you're a selling organisation, you're selling as well. So Scope 1 and 2 are calculated from your gas and electricity bills, whereas Scope 3 are calculated using a model developed by Small World Consulting. And the person who did this for you, I've kind of taken over his role, so I didn't do the calculation, but I will be doing it for you the next financial year. So later on, in about 3 or 4 months time, when you get your end of year data. And so it's a recognised system that basically enables you to work out a footprint from your spend. So on the next slide, I will just quickly show you the results of the carbon footprint. So it's quite surprising to see that the scope 3 are by far the largest, and it's not uncommon for any organisation. You tend to think of your own electricity and gas use, your heating bills, maybe your vehicles, but they rarely account for more than half, and in fact in this case it's less than 10%. So gas and electricity are the obvious ones, but it's all the other stuff that you're doing and buying and spending money on and giving grants to. There are a few disclaimers. So this building, for example, 7% of the total is the electricity and gas of 7% of the total emissions for the council. A couple of things. Obviously, you have to make certain assumptions. It's a difficult thing, and you can never do it totally. But yeah, there are certain things you exclude, certain things you have to assume, and so it's I wouldn't take this as a gospel figure. And also, I guess you'd say, well, how does it compare with other organisations and bodies? We don't have enough evidence from the Environment Centre itself yet to say whether it's good or bad, high or low, whatever. But moving swiftly on, and I wouldn't bother too much about the absolute number, so forget the decimal points and all that, but it's kind of scale, order of magnitude. So this is an extract from the footprint calculator, which just shows your spend items, and each one is, I won't go through the detail, of course, but each one has got an emission factor. So the first one, Underhill Park Grant, 325,000, emission factor of 0.34, whereas other emission factors are 0.15, 0.28, etc. One of the highest ones, if you can see, is actually 1.81, which is Christmas trees and floral decoration. So much higher than the others. That's just, I'm not an expert in the actual background to these data, but that's the methodology we've used. So that's why certain things have a higher emission. So over to the right, you can see there's 5 things identified as hotspots, which are kind of 4% or more of the total, which with the Underhill grant right at the top being by far the largest. So that's just to give you a sense of how we do the calculation, which is why when I was discussing with Kerry, the having this budget data is really vital to be able to do the calculations. So moving on. So the hotspots, just to recap, are the Underhill Park grant. I know this, I believe, is a one-off, wasn't it, in that financial year? But there are other things you'll be doing, other construction projects.
Well, the grant is obviously we repay it over 10 years.
Indeed, and in fact, the loan repayment itself is also a factor. Then there's the fencing and the floral decorations and Christmas trees, and I think in the report itself it does mention a few times that might be quite surprising.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be interrupted along the way. So if there's any key points, in fact, I'll pause. So
I would be interested to know what is it about floral decorations that causes it to have such a high carbon footprint?
Well, I think what they've done is, and I can certainly delve into this a bit more, they've applied a factor that relates to horticulture. So horticulture has a high emission, and obviously flowers and trees are all they've been categorised in that. And it's one of the shortcomings of the thing. So you actually saw that there's the same emission factor for trees as well as floral decorations, just because that's the grouping that we've assigned, or the guy who did this assigned them to. And I think one of the things that we can do sort of going forward is kind of delve into a bit more detail. Is it really as bad as that, or is are there things that we can do? If you switch to a different supplier, for example, can you reduce the footprint or whatever? So I'm not sure that we can necessarily be as granular as that, but I certainly think it really throws up into perspective.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just bring Rebecca in?
Thanks. I think I just wanted to ask about the loan repayment. Is that to do with the carbon emission of financing? Because I think we can probably all guess where the carbon emissions of the park's development come from, but I'm just interested that the loan repayment is a separate item.
Indeed, that's right. There is a carbon emission factor. If you look into detail, and I have sent through certainly to Kerry the emission factors. Everything has got an emission factor, you know, finance, insurance, wages, everything you can imagine, you know, stationery, everything has got a factor. So yes, you're absolutely right. That's why.
So given that then, because the financing of the park came from the Public Works Loan Board, which is, you know, used by local authorities up and down the country, to a certain degree, it feels like we don't really have much control over that. But are there suggestions for what we could do
Yeah.
with finance in particular?
Yes, I mean, I think there are absolutely things that you have very little control over. Rent, for example. I don't know if you're renting this or you own this.
Lease it.
Yeah, okay. So there are things that you have very little control over, so you just have to accept it. One of the things we are encouraging, obviously, is the people to switch to more sustainable or more ethical, let's say, lenders. That's not always possible. If you're stuck with a 10-year repayment, you're stuck with it. So there's nothing you can do about it. So I think you just say, yes, that's part of the emissions. It's not going to change while we're repaying the loan, and just kind of live with it. There's nothing you can do. But I think what you can do perhaps is going forward, and okay, it's not the only factor by any means. You have to look at a number of things. You know, if there is a lower carbon emission lender that's kind of recognised, it's something that you might want to think about. It's something to consider. It's not the overriding factor, but it's something to bear in mind.
Right, and interesting that the lineman, the tennis court fencing has a higher carbon footprint than the actual tennis courts themselves.
I guess that's because there was an investment made in last.
Oh, because of the financial year, right?
Suspend. So the methodology, we very much look at the year's budget. What was the money spent on, and then according to each spend item, apply an emission factor. And in that year, you did the fencing.
Yeah, because the courts had been done previously.
I think it's like with the floral decorations and Christmas trees, it's got that factor on it, which is fixed in the report, so it's not perfect. But what it does is it highlights a higher area, and we can look at our supplier and make a decision based on, you know, who's potentially a better supplier, are they more local, are the methods used for growing different, etc. But I suppose in the report, though, it will still have that same factor, even if we switch to a more ethical supplier, because the factor is fixed, isn't it? So it's not.
It is. I mean, to be honest, that's an area that I need to explore because, as I say, I've only come in the last couple of months. I don't know to what extent this, as you say, switching to either a local supplier or a more ethical supplier or a supplier that's got all the green credentials, whether you can apply a different factor. I believe you can, but I haven't gone through it. So obviously, as I said, we'll be coming up to reviewing this year. So I think that's something we can look into in more detail, and it'll be part of my education as much as anything else.
Okay, right. Rebecca again, and then Sarah.
Yeah, it's just a comment really, I suppose, based on just I mean, this is obviously the very tip of the iceberg of what the report covers, but it seems that where we should focus our energies is on those things like floral decorations and Christmas trees that we do every year. Like we're making even though we're just doing it every year, we're almost making a decision every year, aren't we? We need to think of it that way rather than just doing the same again and again and again. Whereas the things like Underhill and Langland, the fencing, I think they're important lessons for us to learn for projects going forward, but it sounds like those are sort of fixed emissions now. So let's move forward from that and focus on the things where we are making those. They're all, in my mind, they're almost micro decisions because they're just the day to day, aren't they? And how we like make sure that we're factoring this into that. That was a comment.
Thanks. Okay, Sarah.
The floral decorations, do you mean actual plants in planters rather than bunches of flowers? Because I don't think
I believe it is. Indeed, I believe it is planted planters. I mean, I say I haven't gone through line by line each spend item, but I think that's what it was.
Which are provided by Swansea Council, of course.
So what we're aiming for is something more local and something perhaps we grow ourselves, or perennials rather than flowers that get pulled out at the end of the season.
I mean, I think, for example, exactly perennials. I'm back to Rebecca's point. Is if you're doing this kind of year in, year out, and the whole point about this is it shines a light on it, and it makes you think, say, actually, do we need this? Should we switch to perennials? Maybe the answer is no, but at least you had that discussion about it, and you make a decision, a collective decision in the knowledge that it's impacting your carbon footprint.
Well, as Carrie knows, we have had discussions with the council before about this. We wanted more biodiversity with the plants and things that could last for longer. They would, but they did change the peat. But I think that we can go to them again and try again with that. I'd be for that. Right, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, and well, what I would say, obviously, the Swansea Council have committed to their own kind of zero carbon by 2030, and the whole borough by 2050. So absolutely, I mean, I think it's very much one that you're working in tandem on. So anyway, so I think it's thrown up these questions and it's food for thought.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's actually making us stop and think before, as you say, we just tick a box and say, oh yeah, that's same as last year, and move on.
Okay, so what have we got on the next slide? I can't remember.
Oh, hang on. We seem to, I don't know what we've done here. Hang on. There we go.
So I've already kind of touched on these, some of the caveats. So certain things were excluded either because they were difficult or time consuming or lack of data. So capital assets, waste, staff and volunteer and visitor travel and working from home. I mean, these areas that could be included in the future. I mean, obviously you think about travel and vehicle use as potentially quite significant, and the other one is the and he does mention in the report it's possible just by using these standardized factors that we are underestimating, but equally overestimating. But you seem to stress much more the underestimating. But anyway, I see there's a couple more questions.
Yeah, sorry, is that another question from you?
Sorry, legacy hand.
Right, Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm intrigued actually that the volunteers working from home couldn't be captured, because as councillors we're all volunteers, and there's 18 of us, which is 3 times the staff team. So does that mean that none of me sitting at home here with my laptop on doing my emails, has none of that been captured? I just think that's quite interesting that for a community council we're not able to capture like the fundamentals of how we operate.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I think we need to discuss with Kerry and the staff team and say, look, let's find a way in which, even if it's only a sample of councillors, because I think the chances of us getting all 80 councillors to do it is probably not likely, but we could certainly look at if a sample can record their usage, the time they spend working from home. I guess that would at least bring something.
Well, again, that's something. So I mean, we'll talk about next steps at the end, but that's one thing we should certainly put on the agenda for meeting with Kerry. And I would agree. I think it's something that could be done. It doesn't need to be onerous. Doesn't mean you spend half your time kind of
filling in a timesheet.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Okay, so moving on then. The first pie chart showed the total, and now by category, and it's essentially by committee. I guess it's what you've the size of your budget and the things you spend it on. But yes, obviously the Community and Social Development Committee is the big one, because that's got the big construction grants, I guess, culture, tourism, etc. Mumbles Fest. I mean, we talked about that a little while ago, and it was identified as an area that we could perhaps investigate further, but it's only 2% of the total. So. But equally, something that is quite highly visual. It's a big thing. Lots of people attend. So it's something. We could put it on the agenda. Is that an area you want to
think as well we discussed, going back to the Environment Committee, that not all of the spending was considered in it in the last year, so that it would be quite interesting to see, certainly,
Yeah.
because we're using the horticultural sector quite a lot, which is quite high emissions and stuff, particularly with the grant spending on Jubilee Gardens that's going on as we speak. That's quite a lot as well, so we can potentially have a look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, I think going back to Mumbles Fest, I was thinking shocking that that's so low, but then it's only one day.
Yeah.
So that's why. So I think there is still stuff to look at for it. I think it would help. Community and social, dear gosh. Thank you.
Well, it's because of all the Underhill grants in that, so that just, irrespective of what they do, other than that, that just by virtue of Underhill, it's got that massive input. Rebecca?
But that's the case because of the snapshot in time that this exercise has taken, right? Like, I just feel that there's a risk that we say, oh, it's community and social development, it's because of Underhill. Like, if this had been done a different year when we were pouring concrete into a skate park, probably we'd have been saying it could be because of the skate park. I just don't want us to villainize the Underhill project when actually it's because it's big construction capital projects, isn't it? And yeah, those are varied and bring many, many benefits, but carbon footprint of those is challenging.
And you're right, in fact, when this audit was being done, the skate park would have been another significant factor, because this is looking at last year's budget.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, obviously this is the first time that this exercise was done. It's not absolutely picking on this this particular grant, and it is a one-off in, most cases. Sometimes these projects might spend over 2 financial years, but I think it's about looking about construction projects in the round rather. So I think we can certainly look at different ways of cutting the cake next time, for sure. So next couple of slides have just kind of delved into a little bit more detail.
Can we just, Sarah, did you want to come in on the previous one?
Well, I was just going to say quickly, in defence of skate parks, they'll be there a lot longer than the play parks that are being put in at the moment. So even though it might have been quite a heavy carbon footprint, we did look into it at the time and thought it'll be there for at least 50 years. So we're good.
Well, I think the other point to note is everything we do as individuals and organisations has some carbon impact.
Yeah.
We can't exist without doing so unless we're totally renewable fired and all this. So I think it's just a fact of life, really. Yeah. But there are things we can do, and the things that are sensible to do, and there are things that are sensible to stop doing as well. So I'm not saying that there's anything in this that you should be doing. It's not a telling off exercise. So yes, moving on. So again, I don't want to go through all the detail of this, but we have the breakdown and it's based on the spend. So again, next.
Not just come into it. That's interesting.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't in that year, or I don't know.
It was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, floral decorations.
I don't think it was, Carrie. So sorry, just so that we're clear on that. I don't think the skate park would, if it's been done by spend. It was the previous year, wasn't it?
23-24. Quite a significant chunk.
We can double check it, but
lottery grant. Yeah, it opened. Yeah, it opened February 23, didn't it?
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So
So you're right.
Yeah. So the spend was 22-23. That's why. Yeah.
The main spend would have been the previous year. Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on, so I mean, all the graphs are in the report, but just to flag this. So Ostrom Centre, this says 11%. One of the early slides says 10%. I don't know why the difference, but anyway, let's not worry about that. So
rounded up or down.
Well, exactly, yes, probably. So there's the electricity and the gas, but there's also the other things. And the rent, for example, that's one where you can't do anything about it, just to accept it. Yeah. Likewise, pensions, etc. So there's nothing really to kind of say, oh, that's high or low or whatever. It's just kind of, it is, kind of thing. So but yeah, moving on then. So really, I think the key thing out of all of this is what does it mean? So I think it's great that you've signed up to the campaign. It's great that we've done this exercise. It's great that we're talking about it now. So, I mean, the number one I would say out of all of this from the report is, developing the procurement policy for construction, for purchasing. So those are number two, sort of 1 and 2 really. And collectively, to me, number one by far is procurement. It's all about procurement. Sustainable procurement is the buzzword.
Yeah, well, you will be pleased to know that I have just been looking at a draft procurement policy that Kerry's been working on, our clerk.
Indeed.
So we are taking note, and yes, it's something we are working on at the moment, and I believe Helen is having a look at it as well.
Indeed, and I did encourage Kerry, and I've reviewed it for her. I didn't have much to comment on because it seemed to be fairly good and fairly
Good.
So, and then yes, other things. We talked about the grants in this committee. Is it possible to do a sustainable appraisal of them? And then probably the thing. Obviously, yes, you need to keep in mind your gas and electricity use here. It's fairly small, but it's only 10-11% of the total anyway, or less than that. But
because it's the most inefficient building.
yeah, well, it's. I mean, yes, you could do an energy audit. There are no doubt things that could be done. I mean, I can't say immediately, but so
Yeah. Yeah.
In the future, in some years in the future, this building's going to get a revamp,
Yeah.
which is going to be costly and with ongoing costs, like the Underhill and things like that. But there will be a big installation and efficiency drive.
Yeah,
with
it's
this.
going to be a carbon neutral building.
The other thing, up high.
Just, the construction.
So you're going for zero carbon by what timescale? Is that an agreed action?
Well, it's when if we haven't actually identified the funding yet, but when this building is refurbished, be looking at it being run entirely on renewables.
Okay, good.
So that's the intention. We are aiming for it to be the most sustainable village hall in Wales.
Jolly good.
Rebecca.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, would a procurement policy for the contracting of building services, or how would it apply when it's a procurement that's been done through a grant? So Underhill was not procured by us. We did not run that procurement. Second question is, does the source of our electricity at the Ostream make a difference to these calculations? Like, are we already using renewables for our electricity? Or is that a straightforward win? Could we just do that? Could we switch to a...
Yeah, just to pick, because obviously you've not been on the committee, but we have asked Paul. At the moment, we are tied into the Swansea Council energy contract.
Oh.
But we have asked Paul to look at comparative costs through Gower Power, which it works through Ecotricity. So he has got it on his to-do list, but it hasn't actually been done yet.
Okay. I feel like for the benefit of Dan, I should say that I'm just back off maternity leave. So if some of my questions seem daft, that is why.
That's fine.
Absolutely not. But just on that point about, let's say, a green tariff, methodologically, it's ignored because, unfortunately, because, and yeah, it's just the way that methodology works. I think it's something useful to do anyway. And I know organisations do various kind of offsetting type things. And I think it's something you can kind of recognise, but it doesn't have to kind of cut your footprint if you switch to a green tariff.
Right.
And I think Rob and I, you and I can
Yeah.
look into that a bit further and understand it a bit further, but
I think this is the case of that, because I've read stuff about it with your domestic supply, that if you go on to the green tariff, the energy supply is still the same, the amount of energy. So it just means that someone who isn't on a green tariff is getting theirs from a coal-fired power station.
well, exactly, yes.
So the overall energy supply remains the same, and
Essentially, that's right, yes. Yes, you have the same electrons coming through, or new ones anyway. What they do tend to do is they tend to kind of encourage more renewables in the future. And again, you mentioned Ecotricity. Obviously, they invest directly in green power. But yes, I think it's worthwhile doing anyway. But I mean, in the scheme of things, your total energy bill is only 7% of your carbon footprint anyway. So it's not going to kind of drastically change it. So anyway, your other question about procurement and grants, it's a good question. Obviously, if there's a grant and you don't have, I don't really understand the mechanics of how that operates. But yes, if you don't have a say about how that money is spent or who's passing it through, clearly that you maybe you can't influence it, but where you can, you obviously that's where you can apply your new shiny new sustainable procurement policy.
Yeah, I think we're certainly looking at where we do have control, which is when it's things like our small and medium grants, that we are looking at a way in which we can commit people who we give grants to work in a sustainable fashion. So, you know, I'm not, as you say, I'm not sure how we could kind of influence beyond that, but certainly in terms of our own money, I hope that the new policy will impact on that. Rebecca?
Yeah, just on that last point then about the small and medium grants, I think I would just want us to be really careful that whatever we do is accessible to the types of groups that are applying for those grants, because they're micro groups, some of them, doing really tiny things in the community that make a big impact. And I wouldn't want them to be, I mean, I feel like I've been talking for absolutely years about the application form. And how difficult it is to use. So if we add something else on, I'm very, very much in favour of there being some sort of, just a bit like this has made us stop and think, to make our grant recipients stop and think about, oh, actually, I could improve that here, here and here. But for it not to be so onerous, you know, for it to be proportionate.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I was going to say, do we? I haven't had much experience with how we give out the grants so far, but do we ask people applying for the grants whether they've got various policies like safeguarding policies, etc., and whether we ask them whether they have their own environment or procurement policy as part of that process? Could again be onerous for.
it's actually it's a very good point, but we actually don't ask. You know, even though they are groups one would assume would have, we don't actually ask if they have safeguarding policies. Which perhaps we should, I don't know, because certainly we're working with groups who work with vulnerable people. So one would hope they did have, but we don't actually ask.
Yeah, just from my experience of running my own projects, and a lot of funders will ask you to give your policies, you know, when you apply for the funding.
Oh yeah, we had to for the lottery. We had to send them shed loads of policies to
I think
get the money. We were writing them as we went along, you know.
I think to your point, Rebecca, yes. I mean, if you ask the question, if it's not there already, it shouldn't be off-putting, but at least it kind of raises in the mind, oh, they like that. So if I say something positive, I'll look favourable. You know, it's not like a hurdle you have to get over. It's just a reminder. It's something to bear in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, as long as it's not onerous.
Okay, so moving on. Further work. So yeah, in terms of just understanding the footprint itself a bit better.
Top of the list.
I've just copied from the report. It's the way it came out. So these are areas that, you know, I think at the time, the guy who did this probably didn't have enough time to kind of really understand them or whatever, or whoever. I don't know how it was done or who he was working with, but he felt these were areas that he'd like to spend more time on, and probably it's now the onus is now on me to do that.
Yeah,
So yes, I have been speaking to Kerry about your budget for this coming year. It's more about the actual spend that you've actually spent for this year, but it's something we can do in parallel. So as an advanced thing, we could look at your planned budget and say, okay, is there a reallocation of funding that would reduce the footprint without damaging your ambition in terms of what you want to do in the coming year? But equally, what have you spent your money on, and how does that compare with last year, and what does that do to your footprint, and what's the direction of travel, let's say, of the footprint?
yeah. Yes, unfortunately, of course, had we got approval to get an electric van, would have made quite a difference, but sadly we didn't get the funding, so.
And I think finally then, really it's, I mean, the reason why I reiterate, really glad I was able to come here. I've had a couple of meetings with Rob, one with Kerry as well, but really it's about how do we take this relationship forward over the next couple of years? How can you use whatever resources I can bring to kind of help you reduce your footprint? What are your areas of focus? You know, I flagged up the ones that the report found.
Mm.
It sounds as if there is a bit of kind of similarity, but maybe there are other areas that we haven't really talked about that you think we need to focus on. So really it's about where do we go from here? And very happy to be working with you to help you on that journey.
Fantastic. Right, Rebecca.
It's a technical question on the methodology then for working out whether we've hit 25%. Because we talked about what the figures that we've got in front of us are from the financial year 23-24. So do we just do the same exercise for 28-29? The reason I'm asking is that if, what was it, 50 odd percent? If 50 odd percent of our footprint is related to the Underhill grant,
I know.
that is immutable.
Mm.
So 25% as in the next 5 years is really, really challenging.
Mm.
So, like, yeah, is there anything around the fact that that's, you know, the Underhill thing is locked in the methodology that means it's kind of, taken into consideration, I suppose, that was a decision made for 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how, because I mean, it's only when you look at it like that, I read the figures, but it didn't kind of register in the way it does when you see it like in a chart like that. But yeah, I mean, that huge chunk of the footprint, which we know we can do nothing about.
I think what I would say to that is we can obviously, the actual report is called the draft report because, you know, I think there are things, you know, maybe if I were to do it with the same data that Sunny had a year ago or a few months ago, maybe I'd have drawn different conclusions. But I think the thing to do is to be consistent. So if for example, during the second year, we think, okay, if we'd have done it this way in the first year, we'd have had a different answer, then we can back calculate it and adjust the starting point. So I think the point is we don't want to carry forward errors. We don't want to be shackled by one big item, but equally, we want to kind of be moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
To go back to the Underhill development, that was something that was wanted for some 40 years to develop better facilities for the sports, the run down there. And when it got together, there was a final cost of it, and you work in your assumptions from that, really.
Yeah.
No, is that right?
Yes.
Now, what people in this committee, before I was co-opted onto it, wanted was an outlier, an environmental example of what could be done. But it didn't get through other people and other committees, other parts of the council as a whole. So we ended up with what we got. Now, if we if you look at this development of this place in the future in a different way to get more ethical procurement, various things like that, and to get the carbon footprint down for the building running, will that reduce it, or is it just the same pile of money that's being spent? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that specifically, but I think these are all things that we would want to be looking at. And but yeah, I mean, I think really the overall message is there are things you can do, there are things that you can't do. There's historical things that just they're there, but really it's to kind of to question everything going forward. Be it a big spend, be it small spend. You know, some of the things are quite surprising. The flowers, you think, well, okay. I'm conscious of the time, yeah. So I'm very happy to answer any final questions, but I'm very happy to also pick up directly as well afterwards in terms of what we do as the next step. I'll have to leave the room and let you discuss it further.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Is this a UK-wide project?
The big climate leap is just Swansea. So Swansea, it's not council, but it's Swansea area. Let's say it's run by the Environment Centre, as I said, and it's focusing on small third-party organisation or third sector organisations. Places like yourself, Pennard Council are just about to sign up as well.
So wanted to know sort of a comparison.
Yeah, well, that would be really useful because you know there'll be some commonality there. And hopefully sharing ideas rather than being competitive.
Okay, has anyone else online got any last questions for Dan before we let him go? No, I think, well, thank you ever so much for that. It's actually, I do understand it a lot more now than I did when I read the report, which was just all these spreadsheets and figures, and I'm looking, thinking, what am I supposed to make of this? So that's been really helpful, and hopefully, you know, maybe we kind of get, you know, along sort of, you know, twice a year or something, just to kind of, you know, help us to keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
Be
yes,
Yeah,
fantastic.
thanks, Dan. Very
Thank you,
helpful.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Speak to
We're open. I mean,
yeah, that'd be a good one to cut the comment.
Yeah. Right, well, that was great. Thanks for getting Dan along. That was really helpful and gives us a few things to think about. Yeah, you know.
Just ask Carrie, sorry to leap in, but you know the goal of 25%?
Yeah.
How did we come to that?
I think that is the big climate leap overall ambition.
Okay.
So I think, you know, so it's all the organisations that are signed up are working towards that target.
Okay.
But I guess even if we only manage, I don't know, 15%, you know, it's got to be better than not doing anything.
100%.
Yeah.
Like 1% would be better than nothing. Like,
yeah. So I think we see it as an ambition, but you know, based on, as I say, the way the calculations are done on things that we have no control over, then you know we might need to be realistic at looking at where we can make significant reductions to kind of counterbalance where we can't.
I thought about the 25% thing after you said, Rebecca, about it, and yeah, I agree. It's going to be quite difficult with the grant, but that's if we're looking at it as the overall picture of the council's expenditure, we could potentially think about it at different levels. So at committee level, for example, you know, like whether we reduce our carbon footprint in the Environment Committee or try to by 25% in the next 5 years, or vice versa with other projects where we can really focus it rather than, you know, sort of having that big grant hanging over us and yeah, and then not making those changes because we're like, oh, well, we're not going to hit it anyway, so
Mm.
why bother? But no, really interested. It's great that he came along, and it's yeah, interesting report that highlights some really interesting factors about the things that we spend on. And as I said in that, a lot of the Environment Committee spending didn't make it into last year's report either. So that's something I want to pick up with Dan just to see what we're doing too, pretty much.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, is it too late to do anything about the flowers this year? We could try and speak to Swansea Council and say, have you got anything more biodiverse? But I think we're going to have to look it in-house.
I would imagine that they haven't actually been ordered yet, but I wouldn't like to say that categorically. That would Kerry would be the person who knew that. Of course, as it doesn't directly come up, sort of come into our committee because it's in culture or something. I think floral displays.
That they order them all from Holland. I've got a feeling
Right.
that a vast amount of them come from Holland, which would explain the enormous footprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a baby.
Yeah.
They bedding plants as well, aren't they? So they're only one season, so they're growing specifically for one season, and then they go. And peat is still highly used in the horticultural industry, behind the scenes.
Even though we might be not having peat in our particular pots, it could be part of the growing process. Well, I mean, if Swansea Council are committed to reducing, as you say, their carbon footprint by 2030, they are going to have to be looking at things like that as well. So maybe we can nudge them in the right direction.
Well, we could have a word, couldn't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Environment.
Well, sorry. When we had the Green Heroes recently, what was his name now? Will
Beasley.
He was saying about instead of having imported cut flowers, he was talking about Comtown down there.
Yeah.
Which is like must be massively reduced carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking about floral displays, you're talking about hanging baskets that get serviced.
All the things that get put up around the
council. That must be expensive.
And have to be watered a lot as well. That's another problem.
Yeah, watered and fed and all that. That must be very expensive. So
we pay something in the region of about £11,000 for the ones that we commission, which is for, some in Blackpill, some in West Cross, some in Newton, some in the majority, obviously, around here. But
it's just we haven't got greenhouses big enough to grow all the stuff we'd need to put in the plants. That's the thing. But perennials, we could do perennials. I think we could.
So we need to rethink, definitely.
Is that like is that like a community expectation?
Yes. The community like big flowery displays.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
even, we get, people commenting on wherever we've got wildflowers that, they're not very neat and tidy, are they? Why can't we have some nice petunias or whatever in nice serried ranks?
But if we had Mexican daisies, I can't remember the fleabane, I can't remember the Latin name for them, but they flower intensely all through summer, and even now there's some in the garden flowering. They're small and they go over stuff, and if we had those with some ivy, variegated ivy, that's a damn sight better than already with what they put into the
don't let ivy loose anywhere because it'll take over.
So maybe something that could be looked at is, because if we're getting these direct from Swansea Council, I'm just wondering if there's an alternative supplier who could fulfil a contract of that size, who's local, sustainable, and that's something to explore, I think. Because nothing's
worth looking at.
People who do cut flowers, but not in terms of like the bedding plants and stuff. But I'll have another think.
It might even be worth going very local and asking Chris at Crash Hardware, because he's got the big greenhouses. And if we said we're willing to spend this much money, it would pay him to actually do some for us, even if we're going to do some one year and then do the rest the next year, you know, just do it bit by bit and so that we can see how it works.
I mean, I don't know how, you know, carbon neutral his growing is. I don't know what he uses to grow the seedlings in.
No,
and
we don't. We'd have to ask him, and you know,
we'd have to ask Pauline because she works in the greenhouses.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, because it's, you know, it would be no point us literally jumping out of the frying pan into the fire and ending up with, you know, back to kind of being grown in peat with, you know, fertilizers and weed killers and goodness knows what. So,
but I think he did say that he
something to
started a lot of
explore.
stuff off himself by seed, which would make a difference. But we'd have to ask, obviously.
Yeah.
And his answer might be no, I can't do that, and then we'd be back to square one. But we could ask.
Yeah, there's definitely potential for us to look around. Celtic wildflowers, yeah. The Wildflower Cafe, there's, you know, different places that potentially we could look at.
Although what people want is a lot of flowers, so I think what we'd have to do is do a sort of middle of the way where we're not putting wildflowers into containers where they wouldn't be happy anyway, but putting stuff that's great for bees and biodiversity, but flowers a lot more and is a lot more showier, maybe.
Yeah.
Let's not take on all of Mumbles in one go. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Ed.
As well as a community councillors, we're an educational responsibility as well, and trying to work on that community expectation to have like wonderful tulips up until the end of May, and then or whatever, and then wonderful roses and what have you, to get that message over, even if it takes a couple of years, to say this is not the best way. We can do it a different way. So you put it out there.
We have to. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we should be educating. It is our role. You know, it should be to inform and help our community to sort of recognise, you know, the best way of doing things.
That's easy to do. We could just have a bowl. Sorry, we could have a bowl with the plants and say, these are what we have planted in these, and this is why. You know, most people are au fait with that.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay, right. Well, anyway, so what we do need to, I think there's various requests that we pass through Rob in terms of, I mean, as Rebecca raised, about how we at least find some way of recording the, you know, our time spent at home, our mileage usage, car usage, ashes, van usage, all those things. You know, we do need to try and start bringing those into, so maybe that's something you could sort of take up with Kerry, and maybe we can look at a way of, you know, finding a, so do you want to make a note of that, Ian, as an action?
Yes, I'll create that, Chair, yes.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so if we could move on. Sarah, did you want to come in again, or? No. Okay, right, could, let's move on to the minutes. Has everybody read them? Has anybody got any comments on them? Everybody happy? Yeah. So happy to approve those? Yeah, thank you very much. Right, we will move to Ian for just to give us, go through the actions. I don't even know what bit of Ian that is.
Sorry, well, I'm just moving location, Chair, because my signal wasn't very good. So I'm just changing it before, in case you want me to go through it. So forgive me for 1 sec. I'll try it. That's better. Right. Shall I run through them, Kerry? Kerry, is it okay?
The actions.
Right. Well, hopefully you've got the list, the abbreviated list. First one is number 31, which relates to obtaining quotes on picnic benches, etc. And that is in hand, my understanding is. That's
Yes,
correct.
Rebecca started actually the work on so far into the past, I can't even remember when it was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was December 23.
oh no, I think we started way before then.
Oh, okay.
But
when
yeah,
we had our meeting, yeah.
Kerry, I believe it's got as far as Swansea Council have got the picnic benches from Southend Gardens, or somebody's got them, I presume
Right.
Swansea Council, and it's just waiting for them to arrange to actually have them delivered to the locations we have identified. So it's, I think, you know, it's almost at the point where they will actually get put where we said we wanted them to be. I think.
Great. The next one, 42, relates to a draft environmental vision plan, but that isn't due for the agenda until March. So shall I leave that one?
Yeah.
Unless Rob's got an update.
Yeah, I mean, we're really talking about it in terms of sort of linking it in with the big carbon leap.
Yeah, so I've done,
Right, and yeah,
have done some stuff on it
brilliant.
already, just looking at what other policies are available from other councils, basically. So
Good
I
idea.
drafted one using like a local government toolkit, which I've got saved on my hard drive. It's not complete, as it were, but it's something I can provide for the committee. I
Brilliant.
sent it over to Kerry because it will feed in a way into that procurement policy as well, about how we make decisions. So yeah,
Fantastic.
I will have something for the March meeting.
Brilliant.
Good. Another one for you, Rob, number 71, obtaining permission from Swansea City Council for erecting the 3 signposts in relation to Norton Nature Reserve.
Yeah, so with this one, I tried to get permission from Simon Lydiard in Swansea Council to put one by the gate into Castle Woods.
Yeah.
He referred me to the Nature and Deb Hill's team, it's Nature and Conservation team,
Right.
who they didn't think it would be them who would give permission for something of that sort. So back to Simon.
Oh,
What I'll say on that one is we've got Jubilee Gardens going in as we speak on the front, 500 metres away from Norton. So I'll be putting an information board in as part of that project using the lottery funding, which will redirect to the other site. So I'm thinking the only necessary thing with that really is that we could put a like a finger post directly directing people across the road at the traffic lights. I wouldn't want to put it directly across from it. It would only be at that safe cross. It's an awkward spot to cross the road.
Yeah, but traffic lights though would be, because you know, this is the problem at the moment. Nobody knows, because everybody goes along the prom. Nobody knows that we've got the Norton Nature Reserve and the bottle filler available just across the road from them. And, you know, so I do think we should still pursue getting something put up at the gate into, I mean, eventually we will find the right person. It took us about 3 years to track down who we should talk to about the paths through Castle Woods, because nobody wanted to take. Well, no, everyone said it was someone else's department, and we reached the point in the end where I think it was Lewis Hines, when he was still there, said, actually, you know what, I think it's not actually in anybody's department. Somehow when we reorganised, it just got left behind. So that's probably part of this, because Castle Woods don't actually fall into anybody's particular department.
Because I mentioned to him about the gate, that the entrance is falling apart.
Yeah.
It's a real mess and not the best, but nothing on that so far. I mean, I think it maybe feeds into a bigger bit of work, or a different bit of work that we have alluded to and discussed about highlighting a number of our different sites and features, and maybe creating like an interactive map feature, which we discussed when we were speaking with what was her name? I can't remember. It's the lady from Swansea Council who came there.
Oh, Jane.
That's it, Jane Richmond. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've also got it on the agenda as well to discuss the website So it all kind of feeds into that, and whether we have an interactive map showing our water fillers, our community spaces, and then other features like triple SIs, other things around the area. Anything like that as well, we could put that to print and have it put on an information board as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the key thing from my perspective is it's got to be something that people can see from the prom. So whatever we put up has got to be, you know, some means of directing people from the prom across to Castle Woods and the nature reserve. So we will leave you to pursue various people within the council in the hope of finally pinning down someone. I know someone put a message up saying, have you tried Phil Marshall? Well, Phil Marshall was the person I first started with when we were looking at the paths in Castle Woods. So, you know, I think it's kind of full circle again, that because they're not rights of way, he isn't responsible for maintaining them because he very much works with rights of way. And they're more informal paths rather than formal ones.
I'll say as well that I have been obtaining quotes for all the signage as well,
Brilliant.
particularly because we're doing it for Jubilee Gardens, and I need that as part of our existing procurement policy. Actually, anything over £100, I need to obtain 3 quotes for. So,
Okay, so that's sort of 79 dealt with as well, that the quotes are in hand.
Right. Oh, well, the next one is 80s deferred till April. 83. This is to provide a copy of the Future Generations Commissioner's procurement policy to Rob and Paul. Well, I spoke to Kerry, and as you alluded to already, Kerry, she's carried out a procurement policy already, but she wasn't aware of she had to sort of circulate the Future Generations document. As Kerry's done that, are you happy to close that particular action?
I mean, I think so. I think it was just really Helen, obviously, because of her direct.
Yeah, that's right.
Links suggested that they had this policy
Yeah.
in the Future Generations Commissioner's office.
Yes.
That it was worth us looking at.
Yes.
You know, to inform us. I don't think it was a requirement for all of us to look at it, but just to have it there as, you know, something that we could use to inform our own.
Yes, I agree. Right. The next one, 84, was with the RFO looking at leasing of electric vehicle. Well, that was, as you know, that was an agenda item at the special meeting on the 21st. So are you happy if I close that one now?
Yeah, they didn't approve it. So, you know, sadly, there is no future in that.
So moving on. Yes. Moving on to 88, that's ongoing, and that's with Chris Evans in relation to the hedge of the skate park, and he hasn't provided any update. 89 is in relation to the big Climate Leap working group, and Carrie, you're chasing that up yourself, aren't you?
Boris, have you got any more information? So I sent them the information and then it just went silent.
Right.
So perhaps we should try and sort of put a message out, say, we will be having a meeting, and see if that might, really what we were trying to get is someone from each committee.
Yes.
Because not just an environment committee thing, and it was trying to see if there were people from the other committees who could be persuaded to come, but we are not being entirely successful at the moment, but we will. I think we just have to carry on and try and bring people in as much as possible, and, you know, try and win people over.
Yes.
It would be good to, because Dan can do more training as part of his role. So if we booked a specific training session similar to what he's done today, and see if people want to sign up for a set, you know, so it's
Yeah.
in the diary perhaps.
That might be a way to try and see if we could,
And we just have to double check with it, that's fine,
Well,
but
yeah,
that's what he's
yeah.
alluded to.
yeah, I just feel we do need to kind of set something that then, you know, we could go out to everyone and say, this is when it is, you know, this is something that affects the whole council, so, you know, we need people there. Okay,
Good. Number 90, I think, is closed. That related to setting up a fairy light workshop before Christmas. So I think we've passed that one.
good. The good news is that we will be looking at setting up a repair cafe
Yes, yes,
on a broader everything, not just fairy lights.
yes. Yeah. The last three, number 91, it relates to
This is bee-friendly streets. I think Phil was.
Yeah,
working with you, wasn't he?
Myself and Phil were looking at, so again, a few things have really changed, I suppose, since then. So we were talking about using some of the climate emergency budget specifically for bee-friendly streets, and then we had that conversation with Jane Richmond about it becoming using that climate emergency become a broader project.
Yeah, but I think we still said we would retain some of that funding for this purpose.
So out of that, how much would we retain? Is that
It's really a matter of you and Phil look at what you want to do, come back to us and say, we think it would cost about this, and see if the committee's happy. You know, because we do have a reasonable amount of money in there, and we know we've got a relatively short window before the end of the financial year, so, you know, better to get it spent than it not.
Okay. 92, exploring the possibility of holding a plant swap shop and such events at the Norton Nature Reserve. Sarah, do you have any update on that one?
Well, the wrong time of the year, really. But yeah, I've got some plants. I'm hoping to do some more cuttings. I'm hoping that maybe some other our keen gardeners will do some cuttings and grow some stuff from seeds so we can take it along. Maybe we can even end up putting them in the beds that the council put out for us for mumbles.
Yes, yes,
Surely that
indeed.
would be bee-friendly streets as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something I think we want to pick up on, you know, and obviously it's starting now, but looking for the summer. And, you know, it might be maybe worth asking around the allotments if people have spare, you know, because everyone always plants too many cabbages and too many tomatoes, you know, to whether they would be prepared to let us have their surplus seedlings. And of course, we got the lots of seeds that we got for the grow your own food. We could plant some of those.
Okay. Chair, would you like me to defer this one to the summer or keep it for next month?
I think it needs to, I think maybe we need to put it on the agenda for next month to look at how, because we've got to get started on growing the things. So I think we need a clear plan of, you know, do we talk to allotments? Can we ask to, you know, grow some things, take cuttings? So maybe we'll put like a little action plan together, Sarah. Yep.
Okay, good. And the last one, Chair, number 93, and this regards the climate emergency action to create a workshop in 2025 with the aim of promoting practical measures to prevent flooding, incorporating existing good practice from national agencies.
Yeah, well, we've had the initial meeting with Jane, which Phil and myself and Rob were at with Jane Richmond. So I think we could say that is in hand, and, you know, it's all, in fact, I bumped into her the other day. She was unloading manure from the back of her car, like we do. And she said that it looks like the toolkit will be ready sooner than she originally thought. So
I guess for those who aren't there, Jane Richmond is working at Swansea Council to develop a strategy for their, I suppose, resilience to climate change. As part of her role, she's developing a toolkit for community councils to develop their own policy. So she's quite keen to try all that with us once it's developed. So yeah, we'll watch that space on this one.
Okay.
That concludes it, Chair.
Okay, right. Budget monitoring reports. Has everyone had a chance to have a look at them? Probably not. I mean, nothing jumped out at me as being a concern apart from let's get the money spent. And I am aware that quite a lot of what is in here is unspent at the end of November. We have, in fact, either got a plan for, committed to, or, sorry, Rebecca just sent me a message, but it disappeared from the screen as fast as it arrived.
Oh, sorry, Carrie. It was just looking at how much is left on the agenda. I feel I have to warn you that I will have to be gone by 8 o'clock. It was just all.
Yeah, no, we will be finished by 8, and if necessary, I mean, some of these we've actually covered in actions anyway, so we can skip over some of these. So unless anybody's got any questions on the expenditure report.
I have one, sorry.
Yeah.
I was having a look through this earlier and I can see that we've got some unspent bits like Buzz and Bloom, and we've done Buzz and Bloom already this year, haven't we? So we've got 500 sitting there.
Yeah, I think the plan for that is, because what we agreed is we need to start Buzz and Bloom earlier.
Yeah.
So what we should be doing is getting some publicity out in March, really. So that's why I looked at that and thought, no, we will spend that, even if it's on getting posters and leaflets and little postcards like Sarah suggested that we can put through people's doors. Because a lot of, particularly like the vegetable growers, the allotments and people like that said, well, it's too late by now. We've harvested it all. You know, they want it to be, you know, they've got to be able to record from starting their seeds moving forward. So yes, hopefully we will spend it.
Sorry,
Okay,
Carrie, I thought it was
Yeah.
front gardens, the Buzz and Bloom.
Well, we have got about 5 categories, haven't we? Front gardens is one of them, but then there's also one was food growing, one was diversity, bee friendly. Do you remember there were 5 different categories we've got? That's why we changed it from Mumbles in Bloom to Buzz and Bloom. Okay. So yeah, Ian, if you could put that on March agenda. No, actually put it on February agenda so we can get started in March.
Okay, Carrie, that's fine. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Right. Rob, monthly report. If you could sort of whiz through.
Quick, yeah.
But it's as ever a comprehensive report.
Yeah, it's all available. So I guess the highlights are that the litter picking hub got launched on 2nd of January, so that is open, and I'm starting to take a few inquiries after it was in the Evening Post. We got it out. No update on the website, unfortunately, and I have chased it with SA1 to see if I can get some info put on the website, but nothing on that. I was meaning to query with Kerry today what's going on with the contract, but I didn't have a chance. She's super busy with other stuff to get a word in edgeways. But so on that is going to affect, you know, the uptake of public use in the litter picking hub, I think, if they can't access the information about it, unfortunately. But as I say, we are getting a few requests coming through. Bits and bobs. So obviously Jubilee Gardens is the big project at the moment, and we are well underway with that, and ahead of time and looking really good now. We've had 2 weeks on it, on site, got all the groundwork done, so it's just installing the garden now. Hopefully we'll be planting weather permitting, and towards the end of February really. So yeah, all fully expected to be completed by the end of March deadline on that.
Excellent.
Yeah, we've had some really good volunteering sessions as well over the last couple of months. We've been working with Swansea Uni Tree Society to plant quite a few. I think in the first session we did about 450 trees.
Wow.
The second session was was just before Christmas actually. It was like the 21st, I think, so it was a bit quiet at that one, but we still managed to do a couple of hundred trees. They're going into a wildlife hedge along one of the boundaries up at the orchard. We had a really good pruning workshop last weekend as well with Anna Williams. There was an issue with that actually in terms of, and it's age old with these kind of events, that we had 12 spaces available on that to run the workshop effectively. People booking tickets and not turning up, and despite being contacting them the day before or whatever to check. So I'll have a think about what we can do about that, because it's just a bit disappointing for people.
It is. Yeah.
Like,
Mentioned this one of the 2 meetings ago, having a refundable deposit.
Yeah, I think we're
Understand
going to have to
people
start, looking at things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
Same with
Could
Green
I
Hero.
ask you, Rob?
Well,
Rob, is there any chance of getting the dark blue bags, the litter picking bags? I've been asked by a few mums at the hub who like to go around Saturday morning by themselves and pick litter. And they said if they had the dark blue bags, they could put them out to be picked up.
Oh, right, yeah. It's red bags it is at the council.
red
use,
bags,
so it's
okay.
the colour. It's awkward with that because they're provided by Keep Wales Tidy. So, and as part of the litter picking hub, to do it properly, right, they have to submit the full litter pick form. They have to do the risk assessment, etc., even if it's just for bags. So I've had that query and I've responded with that answer, which is the official line, and people don't they don't want to do that just for the bags, unfortunately, but it is the correct process.
Yeah.
I think they're worried about if everyone had the red bags, you just end up with tons of waste people's houses. So unfortunately on that one, they can contact me to do a litter picking hub set up and I can sort out the bags, but it is a bit of a
I mean, maybe a few of them would like to get together on a Saturday morning and do one together.
What I gather, they have areas around their house, their home, where they do various streets around their homes, or where they go back and forth to school.
Yeah, I mean that they don't have to all be in the same place, but just organise it under one umbrella, and then they all go off and do their own bits, just so long as everything is returned.
If you pass them my contact details, if they get in touch with me, I can have a chat about how to sort of streamline it, whether we just do, because if it's the same every week, they'd only need to do the paperwork once and I have it on record then. So it can all be worked out.
Jolly good.
I mean, there's a few other bits in the report. Just a quick look through. Yeah, no, I think we pretty much covered all the key points in that. So happy to move on. As I said, the report is pretty
please do read it.
pretty comprehensive and
and I'll make sure that the upcoming dates are on the in my reports. I put to full council and I always ask them to read your report as well. So that they know what's going on. Okay, any questions, comments for Rob before we move on? No. Okay. Bee Friendly Streets project. See, I told you it was on the. So can I sort of say you and Phil will sit down and make a plan, put a proposal together for next month?
Yeah, so we've already met up actually and put something together, and then I wasn't sure what we were doing in terms of the conversation following on from Jane, and so we have got together, so we can liaise on that.
Yeah, so if you can just come back with the costs and the plan for next meeting, then hopefully you can get that actioned. Okay, there's anything else on Bee Friendly Streets? I know the next litter pick is going to be in Southern Down Avenue in Males, and will be a Bee Friendly Streets event. So it's going to be weeding and tidying as well as litter picking. So we have got that under the Bee Friendly Streets umbrella as well. Okay, Mumbles Green Heroes, I put that on because should we have another event before the end of the financial year? Especially if we got a bit of money left.
I mean,
what I was going to suggest is we actually have, because it only involves a very small number of people, we arrange the recycling visit. And we open it up to people, and the first 10 people who sign up.
I think so. I would say doing a trip somewhere be good, and keeping it small just in terms of organisation. I don't think we've got time necessarily to promote a big event with Gardeners Question Time as well on at the same time. So, but what might be nice on that, either the recycling plant or up to Cove Ellen as well, could be another option. So, or there's various trips we could do. It would be quite quick and easy to arrange.
Okay, well, if you ever think about what would be the best thing, and then for March, for the beginning of March, we'll aim to, I mean, we need to agree it now, because the next meeting's not till the end of February. Well, we can still got time to fit it in. But I mean, the recycling centre's easy. Basically, we contact the, what's his name? Thomas Williams, isn't it? Thomas Williams. And ask him for a few dates, then we put it out and say, right, I think it's a maximum of 10 that they can accommodate. And Phil and Sarah and I were completely fascinated by it. We can highly recommend a trip to the recycling centre, believe it or not. It really is worth looking at. Okay, so that's great. Thanks for that. Climate emergency action, obviously, we did touch on it briefly. We are working now with Jane Richmond, which is fantastic. She was really, really keen, really helpful, really supportive, very keen for us to link in with the work that they're doing in Swansea Council. And we are looking at having some sort of event, which would involve, us encouraging people to report and talk to us about what their issues are, but also for us to start putting out the message about, how people can help themselves to reduce the risk of flooding. And other extreme, we sort of widened it to sort of climate extremes, like wind, as we know from today, extreme heat, just so people are prepared in some way, or as best they have the opportunity to be prepared anyway.
Maybe do something like the resilient garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, question on that one then, because as I say, things are quite fluid and quite dynamic. So I put in the budget proposal for the SUDS awareness campaign a while ago.
Yeah, that budget will be next year's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. And that will kind of, those two bits of work can sort of feed into each other.
absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it will be an ongoing thing, and we will be, getting an event organised to work with people on that. Okay, any other comments, questions on that? Any ideas, please, we would be delighted to have them, feed them through to Rob. I mean, it was Phil and myself who met with Jane, but obviously we welcome anyone else. There's Sam. Hello, Sam. So we got a baby and a cat on screen.
It was one thing I mentioned, Rob, about 2 weeks ago, something like that. There's water testing project
in Langham Bay.
well, anywhere in the country. It's Earth Watch, I think was the name. It's a European.
Oh, right. This isn't Tonia's campaign.
No.
Ah,
And
right.
it involves volunteers, and they get is a thing going on with Nottingham University, is it? I can't remember. There's two universities, and Imperial College London,
Okay.
and they've got a kit together and the explanation. So you can go out and test the water.
Right.
Volunteers, and then the samples will be sent off and analysed, so you know exactly what pollution's in the water, whether it's sewage, whether it's
That sounds like we should be involved in.
something with, with some protection that younger people could get.
I was just thinking, yeah.
But, in more adult pupils rather than the toddlers, right? But, so you're not falling in the water. But it's I've got the details somewhere at home, but
I've just got one here.
it's something that could work in with volunteers and with
Definitely.
vandals. It's climate emergency. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's giving information that could be done over a weekend or 2 weekends. That it takes the Environmental Agency, which is the overall body I'm talking about, on a separate website, like Wales and Scotland, whatever. Takes them weeks and weeks or months to get together that data, and that you get it and it's valid. They get it
Brilliant.
because it's validated by these
Universities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there a time limit by which time?
There's a big push. There's a special date in April.
Ah, perfect. So we could
Towards the end of April.
we could put that in on the agenda for next month, the water quality testing project.
No problem. Water.
Then we could get some dates in April, the dates when they want us to do it, and get a volunteer event
Yeah.
running for that.
Yeah, but we've certainly got plenty of water courses that's
Like that.
in the bay, so it's all valid.
Yeah, fantastic.
as well. That could be something I could look at because the eco schedules get approved as well, didn't that?
Yes.
There's an activity with water testing. I'd have to spice, but it's on the
Yeah, we don't want to drown anybody.
But I've done pond dipping with primary school kids, and it's absolutely fine as long as you know assess the risk in don't go like a raging torrent. And then it's just for assessing.
But there are, like in Klein Gardens and places where they're perfectly safe, easily accessible, and kids, and they're only that deep, so.
Pretty well, these are.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Right, so, yes, we'll obviously make sure everyone knows if we're meeting again with Jane, and obviously anybody who wants to can come along and be great. Litter-free zones and monthly litter pick dates, back to you, Rob.
Yeah, I just want to discuss, because I've been talking to Carrie about this a little bit, and basically doing the litter picks on the Sunday, there's a couple of reasons why I just don't think it's the right day.
Okay.
So there's the aspect of how, so there's a bit of weekend working in the job, right? But at the minute I'm working every other weekend and then doing, I'm doing a couple of hours and then getting a couple of hours toil back in the week. So I'm working 6 days a week and it's not working for the personal life. So I've spoken to Carrie about that, and she understands that situation and is fine with me putting this to the meeting. So I guess my suggestions about, and I also say that when I've contacted councillors as well, a bit of feedback is that they didn't want to particularly do them on a Sunday morning either. So a couple of alternatives really that we could do with it that we discussed with Carrie. So we could look at doing them as an after school thing, particularly as we go into the longer days now.
Yeah,
To go around school by school and rotate it that way around the wards.
yeah, that would be good.
Fully open. And then
That's
we've
a
also
much better idea. That is a
Mhm.
good idea, Rob.
And then we've also got the litter picking club as well, if people want to organise their own litter picks and stuff like that. So maybe moving away from doing all that on
Yeah. One of these things, we started it at a time when there was I think it was sort of lockdown, and there was real issues with, the prom being a mess, and, West Cross, there were issues on the estate, and it's one of those things that just sort of carries on. And, it's probably time, after 3 or 4 years that we did, stop and think, is there a better way we can do this?
Yeah.
Could be an in-school activity, in-school time activity as rather than after school. Because you more children going home with more information, parents, and it wouldn't affect the pickups at the end of school because they'd be.
Yeah, I think we're thinking more of like with the mums and dads. So do it after school, so the kids and their parents.
Yeah.
Come along. But I mean, it would start with, as we have got funding for next year to do some pilot projects with schools. So, we could link this in with it. But give them the information in school, and, they can do something if they want to in their school ground, but then have an event, which is mums, dads, kids, everyone, as an after school litter pick in, you know, round each school.
After school is easier for the school and for us to organise, just because
Definitely.
it doesn't take any time out of the
Yeah.
schedule. And essentially, all we'd be asking schools to do is advertise it to the parents rather than them having to. Because if we did it in school, I suppose it takes time away, and then they've got to have X amount of staff come out to do it with me and things like that. So that's what we're thinking about. But certainly it could be, if there was appetite for it to go on during school hours, it's, you know, I'd be absolutely fine with that as well. Yeah, that's no issue with me.
Okay,
So,
yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, incredibly supportive of it being an after school activity. I think it would go down really well. I think the idea of rotating it by school is a good one, but it may limit our vision for locations that we do the litter pick. I'm just thinking, like in West Cross, we've got 3 schools next door to each other. So to do three litter picks in a row that are in that vicinity might not work.
Yeah,
My
that's right.
suggestion is to ask the kids where they think that we need to do the litter pick. So like maybe a couple of weeks, like, you know, a couple of weeks before we're due to be at Lloynderu, contact Lloynderu. Can you ask the kids? Could you ask the school council? Like however they want to do it to get people voice involved. And then that way there might be a bit more motivation for the kids to like travel to wherever that location is.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, right. So,
Yeah,
Ian, if we could have this on the agenda for next month, and we'll revamp the whole litter picking programme, and then we can start that new.
No problem. Okay.
Hopefully from sort of March, April time. Okay, Fly Tipping Action Wales toolkit sharing update. I still don't know anything about this.
This is a bizarre one because Ian emailed me about this morning, and it's not something I brought up either. So I'm not sure. I've looked into it as to what it is, and it's just an organisation that provides advice around fly tipping. But I'm just not sure why it's on our, because it's been on our agenda since September.
I know, because I think it just arrived. I think somebody, as you say, obviously contacted saying there is this toolkit available that we should, you know, I think we thought, oh, well, let's have a look at it, but then we haven't ever got as far
I
as.
look at the website and stuff, but it's not anything radical.
No.
It's all stuff that we're pretty good, I think, down here in terms of
Just put something on our website.
It's just a council thing.
Right, more than us.
yeah, because we report it to City and then
Oh, right.
I mean, they've got to pick it up.
Yeah.
You can't just have anybody.
Yeah.
Perhaps you got other, you know, dangerous things, and you've got to be picked up properly and set to disposal. So it's a city council thing.
Right, okay, so we'll sign that off, Ian. Oh, sorry,
So
Rebecca?
just to underline that point, it's only the city council that can enforce as well. And they do actually, like, as they're going through fly tipped waste, look for evidence of whose it is and enforce
So
that way. So it's really important that it's reported to city.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
right, Mumble Skate Park update, that was just asking Chris if there was any update on the fence stroke hedge, and obviously he's not here. We can't have an update on that. And the last thing on the, oh no, not quite, engaging with young people. This really was just raising, I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at the document that Sarah, oh, I haven't heard that, she's just disappeared. Her and Phil have both disappeared. Oh, right.
I did have a hand up earlier.
Yes. No, I think she was just saying she had to go.
Oh, we're not quorate.
No, I know. Because we've now lost Phil and Sarah. So there's only 2 of us left. So, and seeing as this was something that Sarah put together with lots of really useful ideas in, maybe I could just suggest we ask everyone to read it before the next meeting. It's available on the Teams folder. Do you get access to that, Ed? No, so if we could make sure, I'll make sure I send it to you. And we can look at them next month and see which ones we can perhaps incorporate into you know, the work that we're doing with the budgets we've got, because a lot of them are things that we've sort of got various things involved in. It would just be a way of, you know, building them in. Okay. So if that
Can I
could
just
go on.
make a very minor point for when it's next on the agenda? I think if a young person was reading the agenda and saw engaging with young people in inverted commas, they would think that we are right, you know, they would rightly think that we are a little bit disconnected from them, and it might undermine the whole process of engaging with them. So could we take the commas away, please? The
Right,
inverted
there we are.
commas.
Ian?
Yeah, no problem. Hold on. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and then, yeah, we can have a read of, I just highlighted the ones that are most relevant to the Environmental Committee, because lots of them are things that are not directly within our remit, so we don't want to be treading on other people's toes. And finally, MCC website. Well, I think Rob's said it all in the, I've asked SA1, I've heard nothing. That's,
Well, it followed on from our conversation with Jane Richmond, and that we got that 5k climate emergency budget that we want to spend, and we're not going to spend all of that on the Be Friendly Streets leaflet. So we discussed using some of that to have our own standalone website, and I suppose the rationale for that being as part of climate emergency was that the website would form a point at which people could highlight you know, issues they're facing, whether it's surface water flooding, overheating, etc. And we can have a kind of map that displays where there's hotspots, different issues, etc. And I spoke to Kerry and Paul about it, and yeah, they're absolutely fine if we wanted to do that, and if that's what the committee would want to spend their money on, then we can go ahead. So I guess with that, my query on that is, so obviously end of March then is when that money needs to be spent, or can it be committed?
can be carried over, yeah, if we ring fence it. If we've got a, you know, if it's kind of in hand and we've identified what we need to do with it, then it can, and
Do you need to have quotes at that point? Because I can start getting
it would be ideal if we could have some.
by the end of March, and quotes should be fine by the end of March. I was thinking in terms of having it done.
Oh, no.
Would be what-
No, we can just get the quotes.
Yeah,
And what I suggested, obviously we can't make any decisions here because there's only Rebecca and me left, is that we actually have, and maybe we could do it next month, maybe in March, the committee actually throws in everyone's ideas of what they think should be on the website. So that we've got a real plan that we can then put out to a developer to say exactly what it is we want the website to do. Rebecca?
I think I was going to make exactly that point, that
Right.
I'm not convinced it's a cut and dry decision to do this without there being a clear spec for what we would get from a separate website that we wouldn't, apart from the fact that SA1 are being useless, story of our lives, that isn't actually potentially necessarily a good reason to just go ahead and like forge a different brand on the climate emergency stuff. So I think if we could agenda for next time, early in the agenda, when we have high energy and high attendance, like basically crowdsourcing the spec for what that website would be, then that would help us definitely be sure that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, good idea. Yes. Okay, so and so Ian, if you could just sort of note, that hopefully people will come in with ideas, and
Okay.
I'll make sure we put a message out to everyone saying, please, come with ideas about how you think either a section of our current website or a separate website should look.
It's worth mentioning as well, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they and where it is now, that they've gone out to tender for the overall community council's website as well. So I suppose that impacts it as well. If we get a good company doing that, it changes the dynamic somewhat from what we've got at the moment. Okay, right. Well, thanks very much. And
See you all soon. There's a whole pile of food under this table, Rebecca, which I presume is heading your way.
Yes,
That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 big crates full.
There's also a message heading your way, Carrie, to see if you're available on Wednesday afternoon to help me with that.
I'll help you with it.
Yeah, that,
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll message you separately.
Chair, can I stop recording, Carrie? Would that be okay?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, meeting's finished. Thank you very
Right.
much, everyone.